An overworked and overwhelmed billionaire, convinced that the best solution to his problems was to divorce the woman who had stood by his side through every high and every low, believed he would find someone better, someone younger, someone prettier. But everything changed the day he secretly disguised himself as a gardener to uncover the truth behind the sudden mistakes of his loyal housemaid, only to be completely unprepared for the shocking moment when he watched, hidden among the plants, his charming and supposedly caring fiancée take his baby to the edge of the pool, pretend it was an innocent game, ignore the child's desperate cries, dismiss the maid's warnings, and finally reveal a side of herself he never imagined existed, forcing him to question every lie, every accusation, every manipulated situation, and ultimately decide whether to expose her, protect his son, and confront the dangerous truth he had been too blind to see. But what he didn't know was that this wasn't even half of the things she had already done to the baby, and when the maid finally found the courage to reveal the whole truth, it was already far too late for him to take action. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. Daniel Walker spent most of his days trying to hold together the company he had built and the home he shared with his family. Even though he had achieved great success in the technology world, he felt pressure from every direction. When he returned to his large mansion, the silence inside only made the tension between him and Laura feel stronger. They had fallen into a routine of arguments, and each conversation seemed to return to the same topics: how often he was away, how little time they spent together, and how difficult it had become to handle the weight of old problems that neither of them fully knew how to solve. Every room in the mansion had the look of wealth, but none of them felt warm or peaceful. Liam, their baby, remained unaware of the adult struggles, and perhaps it was better that way. Mariah Jones, who had been with the family for 8 years, took care of him with patience and understanding, trying to keep him calm and shielded from the tension. Mariah spent most of her time moving quietly through the house, keeping an eye on Liam and trying to prevent him from hearing the arguments that often echoed from closed doors. She knew the signs too well: Laura's voice rising, Daniel's frustration spilling out, and the heavy silence that followed their disagreements. When things intensified, she would gently carry Liam to another part of the house, humming softly or distracting him with simple objects so he would not feel unsettled. Daniel rarely noticed these small acts of care because he was always too tired, too stressed, or lost in his own problems. Laura, on the other hand, often ended up alone in a room, crying quietly where no one could see her. Mariah wished she could do more, but all she could truly offer was stability for the baby and small efforts to keep the household functioning. The mansion, with its expensive furniture and spotless halls, did little to hide how fragile the family had become. The large windows let in natural light during the day, but the atmosphere inside remained heavy. Daniel walked through the house, feeling like he belonged everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He knew something was breaking, but he did not know how to fix it without letting something else collapse. Laura felt abandoned even when he was home, because his mind was always elsewhere, stuck in meetings, numbers, deadlines, and decisions. Mariah was the one who kept daily life steady, ensuring Liam had his meals, his naps, and moments of comfort. Although she never interfered directly in the couple's issues, she could not ignore the growing distance between them. She noticed the tired way Laura stared at the floor and the way Daniel avoided long conversations. Liam remained the only true source of warmth in the house. When he laughed, the sound softened the tension for a moment. When he slept peacefully, Mariah felt a small sense of accomplishment, knowing she had helped him stay calm despite the constant chaos around him. She spent hours holding him, feeding him, or gently bouncing him in her arms while moving through the long hallways. Daniel sometimes stopped to look at the baby, but even then, his tired eyes revealed how disconnected he felt from everything happening around him. Laura loved her son deeply, but she was overwhelmed. Her emotions often spilled out when she was alone, hidden behind closed doors where she thought no one could hear her. Still, Mariah noticed the quiet sniffles, the red eyes, and the way Laura avoided looking at Daniel afterward. Daniel kept trying to convince himself that things would improve once work became less demanding. He believed that if he could just solve a few problems at the company, he could return home with more energy and more patience. But each day seemed as busy as the one before, and the cycle of exhaustion continued. Meanwhile, Laura could not understand why he couldn't see how much she needed him now, not later. She felt like she was losing her husband piece by piece, replaced by a version of him worn down by responsibilities. Mariah witnessed these silent shifts, and although she said nothing, she took extra care with Liam, sensing that the baby needed stability more than ever. She avoided any sudden noises, kept routines predictable, and maintained a soft tone whenever she spoke around him. In the quietest moments of the day, Mariah sometimes stood in Liam's nursery, looking around at the gentle colors and soft blankets. It was the only room in the mansion that felt peaceful. She made sure everything was in its place, hoping that this small space would remain untouched by the tension that filled the rest of the house. Daniel occasionally walked past the nursery, pausing for a moment before moving on, as if he wanted to step inside but didn't know how to deal with the feelings waiting for him. Laura also lingered near the doorway at times, torn between wanting comfort and fearing she would cry again. Through all of this, Mariah continued doing what she always had, protecting Liam's routine, offering calm where she could, and quietly carrying the emotional weight that no one else seemed able to handle. Daniel and Laura reached their breaking point after a very harsh argument filled with old jealousy and painful accusations. Both of them knew they had crossed a line that they could not ignore anymore. They tried to talk calmly afterward, but every sentence reminded them of how tired and hurt they were. In the end, they agreed that the marriage could not continue. The decision felt heavy, yet it also seemed like the only possible choice. The divorce happened quickly, without drama in public, but inside it was extremely painful for both of them. When the paperwork was done, Laura packed only her clothes and a few personal items that held meaning to her. She refused the large amount of money Daniel offered, saying she wanted to start again on her own terms. Leaving the mansion was difficult, but she believed she needed distance to breathe. Daniel watched her go, unable to ignore the sense of failure that followed him through every room afterward. Laura moved into a small house in a quiet neighborhood. It was nothing like the mansion she had lived in before, but she did not mind. She wanted a place where she could think clearly and rebuild her life without constant reminders of arguments, pressure, or expectations. The new house felt empty at first, but the simplicity gave her a strange comfort. She filled her days with small tasks, trying to create routines that made sense for her new reality. Although she missed Liam deeply, she knew the custody agreement was fair. Liam would stay most of the week with Daniel because the mansion had more structure, space, and help from Mariah. Still, every time Laura returned home after visiting him, she felt a quiet ache that stayed with her. She tried not to cry as often as before, reminding herself that rebuilding took time and patience. The custody agreement stated that Liam would spend time with both parents, but the baby naturally remained more in Daniel's care due to the environment he could offer. The mansion had everything Liam needed, and Mariah was there every day to keep his routine stable. Daniel felt unsure about handling the new situation alone, but Mariah guided him through the basic steps, making sure the baby was fed, rested, and calm. Liam adapted better than expected, mostly because Mariah kept familiar habits in place. When Laura visited, she held Liam close and tried not to show her sadness. Mariah noticed the emotions behind every forced smile, and although she did not interfere, she offered silent support. She would prepare tea, listen, or simply stay nearby so Laura wouldn't feel alone. They had built a bond over the years, and Mariah felt it was her responsibility to help both mother and child during this change. Daniel dealt with the heavy guilt from the divorce. He blamed himself for not balancing work and family, and for letting distance grow between him and Laura. Trying to ease this guilt, he began buying many toys, clothes, and expensive items for Liam. He believed these gifts might bring some happiness, or at least make the house feel less empty. But even as he watched Liam play, he could not shake the feeling that he was trying to replace emotional presence with objects. Mariah saw the pattern forming and stayed focused on what Liam truly needed: stability, calm, and routine. She kept the baby's meals at regular times, ensured naps were never skipped, and maintained the familiar activities that helped him feel secure. Daniel appreciated her efforts, even if he rarely said it out loud. He knew she was the one keeping the house functional and Liam comfortable. While Daniel tried to adjust to being a single parent during the week, Laura struggled with the silence of her new home. At times, she felt strong, ready to rebuild her life from the ground up. Other times, she felt lost, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Mariah visited her when she could, bringing updates about Liam and checking on her emotional state. These visits gave Laura comfort because Mariah understood the family better than anyone else. They talked about simple things, avoiding painful details unless Laura needed to express them. Daniel, on the other hand, tried to stay busy with work and parenting, hoping that activity would distract him from regret. Even though the mansion remained large and quiet, he tried to fill it with moments centered around Liam, hoping those small efforts would slowly repair what had been damaged inside him. Mariah continued dividing her time between the two households, offering support wherever it was needed. She made sure Liam stayed healthy and relaxed with Daniel, and she made sure Laura did not feel abandoned in her new life. The transition was difficult, but Mariah's consistency helped soften the edges of the situation. She did not judge either parent. She simply focused on Liam's well-being and the emotional needs she saw in both adults. The baby remained the center of her attention, and she protected his routine with care. Daniel sometimes wondered how he would manage without her, especially when guilt overwhelmed him. Laura, too, felt grateful for Mariah's presence, knowing that even though her marriage had ended, one part of her old life remained supportive. Through all the changes, Mariah kept everything balanced as best she could, ensuring that Liam felt safe despite the separation that reshaped their lives. Daniel met Vanessa Price at a charity gala where many wealthy and influential people were gathered. She stood out to him immediately because she seemed confident, charming, and very comfortable in that environment. When they started talking, she showed great interest in everything he said, reacting with smiles and supportive comments. Daniel, who had been feeling lonely after the divorce, appreciated the attention more than he realized. Their conversation flowed easily, and by the end of the evening, they had exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again. Soon, they were seeing each other often. Vanessa always appeared polished, wearing clothes that looked carefully chosen. She liked to show interest in Daniel's life, asking about his work and pretending to admire the mansion he lived in. Daniel began to look forward to her visits, believing that he had finally found someone who appreciated him and understood what he had been through recently. Before long, Vanessa started visiting the mansion regularly. She arrived with perfect hair, perfect makeup, and expensive bags that seemed to match her outfits. Every time she came, she brought a gift for Liam, usually something colorful or flashy. She made sure Daniel noticed the effort, acting as though she naturally enjoyed being around children. In public, especially when friends or staff were around, she held the baby gently and smiled for pictures, as if she were already preparing for a future role in the family. Daniel saw these gestures as signs of affection and responsibility. He believed she was trying to bond with Liam and that brought him comfort. He wanted stability for the baby, and Vanessa seemed willing to help. Whenever visitors came to the mansion, she behaved like the ideal partner, showing kindness and warmth. Daniel felt proud having her by his side, thinking he had made a good choice. However, when no one else was watching, Vanessa's behavior was very different. When Liam cried, she showed irritation instead of patience. She often rolled her eyes or sighed loudly, making it clear that she did not enjoy dealing with the noise. She held him stiffly, without the natural softness that Mariah used. Sometimes she tried to calm him, but she quickly gave up if he kept crying for more than a few seconds. Mariah noticed these changes in attitude. She observed the sharp difference between Vanessa's public sweetness and her private impatience. Even though she kept her thoughts to herself, she stayed attentive, especially when Vanessa interacted with the baby. Mariah did not trust the inconsistency she saw, but she continued working normally, making sure Liam stayed comfortable and safe. Daniel, still emotionally fragile from the divorce, did not see any of these details. He believed Vanessa's charm was genuine and did not imagine she could be acting differently behind his back. Vanessa increased her presence in the mansion over the next weeks. She walked through the halls with confidence, as if she already belonged there. She asked questions about the decoration, the schedule, and even the way certain rooms were organized. Daniel found this attention flattering, thinking she was simply interested in the place where he lived. Whenever she sat with him, she praised the house and commented on how well everything was maintained. Daniel felt valued by her compliments. Mariah, however, noticed how Vanessa's eyes examined everything too closely, as if she were studying the house rather than appreciating it. She watched Vanessa move from room to room, asking small but personal questions, evaluating the daily routine in a way that felt intrusive. Still, Mariah said nothing, keeping her professional distance. She focused on Liam, knowing that her responsibility was to him above anyone else. As Daniel grew more attached to Vanessa, he stopped questioning her behavior. He felt grateful to have someone who seemed interested in his son and his home. In reality, he was still trying to fill the emotional emptiness left by the divorce. Vanessa sensed this vulnerability and continued presenting herself as supportive and affectionate. Daniel did not realize how much he was depending on her presence. He believed she could help him rebuild his personal life more quickly, and this belief influenced his decisions. Whenever Vanessa smiled at him or touched his arm, he felt reassured. Mariah, watching from a distance, feared he was moving too fast, but she knew it was not her place to interfere. Her only concern was that Liam's routine remained stable, no matter what changes were happening between the adults. With only a few weeks of dating, Daniel decided that he wanted Vanessa to be a permanent part of his life. One evening, he presented her with a luxurious ring and asked her to marry him. Vanessa accepted immediately, smiling as if she had expected the moment. Daniel shared the news with his staff and friends, excited and relieved. Vanessa began acting as though she were already the lady of the house. She walked through the mansion with even more authority, paying attention to every detail of the daily routine. She watched how Mariah handled Liam, how tasks were organized, and how each room functioned. Mariah felt the shift clearly. The house began to feel different, as if someone new was trying to take control of everything. She continued to stay alert and quiet, knowing her role was to protect Liam's well-being above all else. From the moment the engagement was officially announced, Vanessa began treating Mariah differently. Instead of polite comments and fake smiles, she started making small, sharp remarks that sounded harmless at first, but carried clear criticism. She said the baby's clothes looked poorly chosen, even though Mariah always prepared everything with care. She claimed the bottles were sometimes too warm or sometimes too cold, even when Mariah followed the same routine she had used for years. She also complained that parts of the house had a strange smell, even though the mansion was always cleaned and organized. These comments came little by little, always spoken in a calm tone that made them seem like friendly suggestions. Daniel heard some of these remarks and felt unsure. He respected Mariah, but he also wanted to believe Vanessa. He did not want any conflict inside the house, so he stayed quiet and tried to convince himself that the situation was harmless. In private conversations with Daniel, Vanessa pushed her criticism further. She waited until they were alone, then mentioned that Mariah seemed slow with tasks lately. She said the routine felt disorganized and suggested that the baby's mood changes might be caused by negligence. She even described moments where she claimed Mariah had been rude, although those moments had never happened. Vanessa used a gentle voice and acted like she was only trying to help. Daniel, already confused by the recent changes in his life and trying to build trust with his fiancée, started to doubt himself. He wondered if he had stopped paying attention to small problems in the house. Vanessa pointed to Liam's occasional crying as proof that something was wrong, repeating that a baby only cried that much when someone was failing in their responsibilities. Mariah noticed Daniel's shifting attitude, but she didn't know the reason behind it. One day, Vanessa crossed another line. During Liam's meal, she added too much salt to his food on purpose, but acted surprised when the baby rejected it. With Daniel nearby, she blamed Mariah immediately, saying the food tasted strange because Mariah must have prepared it incorrectly. Daniel tested it and agreed something felt off. And though he didn't accuse Mariah directly, Mariah could see suspicion forming in his eyes. She tried to explain that she had followed her usual steps, but Vanessa insisted she had seen her rush through the preparation. Her tone stayed calm and collected, which made her sound convincing. Daniel didn't know what to think. He trusted Mariah, but he couldn't ignore the repeated comments anymore. Vanessa saw his reaction and continued behaving like she was only protecting the baby's well-being. Vanessa also began moving objects around the house to make Mariah look disorganized. She would take something from a shelf and place it somewhere unusual, then later mentioned to Daniel that Mariah had left items out of place again. She repeated this several times, always making sure Daniel noticed the mess. When he asked Mariah about it, she was confused because she knew she hadn't misplaced anything. Vanessa, pretending to be supportive, would sigh and say she understood how stressful working in a large house could be. Her comments were designed to sound reasonable, but they slowly damaged Daniel's trust. Mariah felt the pressure growing. She continued working carefully, but it no longer mattered how precise she was. Vanessa always found something to criticize, always in a soft tone that made it difficult for Daniel to see the manipulation taking place. As the days passed, Daniel's confusion increased. For years, he had trusted Mariah completely, relying on her to keep the house peaceful and Liam well cared for. But Vanessa constantly pointed out new mistakes, always with a concerned expression. Daniel didn't want to accuse Mariah unfairly, but he also didn't want to ignore potential problems involving his son. He felt caught between loyalty to a longtime employee and the influence of his future wife. This internal conflict left him tense, distracted, and uncertain. He started watching Mariah more closely, trying to see whether Vanessa's comments were justified. Mariah noticed the change in his behavior, and although she tried to hide her sadness, it became harder each day. She had always done her job with dedication, but now nothing she did seemed to be enough. Eventually, Vanessa suggested something more drastic. She told Daniel that maybe it was time to replace Mariah with a professional nanny who had modern training and certificates. She said it with a tone of concern, as if she were thinking only about Liam's safety and happiness. Daniel didn't agree immediately, but the idea stayed in his mind. Vanessa continued to remind him of every small problem she claimed to see, repeating that Liam deserved the best care possible. Slowly, Daniel's confidence in Mariah began to crumble. He didn't want to fire her, but he no longer felt certain about her work. Mariah, sensing the shift but not knowing everything Vanessa had said, continued doing her job quietly, though she felt the ground beneath her becoming less stable each day. Vanessa increased her manipulation in ways that Mariah never imagined possible. One afternoon, when no one else was watching, Vanessa dropped an expensive piece of jewelry in the hallway. She then picked it up quietly, carried it to Mariah's room, and placed it inside the housemaid's wardrobe, hiding it under some folded clothes. She acted casual the rest of the day, speaking politely and pretending nothing was wrong. But later that night, when Daniel was nearby, she suddenly claimed her jewelry was missing. She pretended to search the house, calling Mariah into the room and asking if she had seen it. When she suggested checking the wardrobe, Daniel followed her, confused but trying to stay fair. When he found the jewelry exactly where Vanessa said it would be, he froze. Mariah was shocked and speechless. She denied everything again and again, but Vanessa started crying, saying she felt betrayed. Daniel did not know who to believe and felt pressured to take action. Daniel gave Mariah a formal warning to maintain order, even though part of him still trusted her. The warning hurt Mariah deeply because she had never stolen anything in her 8 years of service. Vanessa watched quietly as Daniel spoke, pretending to be upset but clearly satisfied with the result. In the following days, the atmosphere in the mansion became heavier. Mariah moved carefully, feeling like every step she took was being observed and judged. Daniel avoided looking her in the eyes, unsure of how to handle the tension. Vanessa continued acting sweet around him, comforting him as though she wished none of these problems were happening. But when Mariah passed by, Vanessa's expression changed to something cold and victorious. Mariah sensed that the accusations were not random, but she could not understand why Vanessa targeted her so intensely. Every day became more stressful as she tried to protect her job and her dignity. Things escalated again when a bruise appeared on Liam's forehead. The injury happened shortly after Vanessa left him near a toy that was obviously unsafe for a baby of his age. Instead of accepting responsibility, Vanessa quickly blamed Mariah. She claimed she had found the baby alone and that Mariah must have left him unsupervised. Daniel rushed to check the injury and became alarmed, unable to decide what had truly happened. Vanessa repeated her story calmly, insisting she only wanted to keep Liam safe. Mariah tried to explain that she had never left the baby unattended, but her words sounded weak compared to Vanessa's rehearsed version. Daniel felt torn. Part of him still believed in Mariah's long history of good work, but the constant accusations made him doubt his own judgment. The situation in the house became unbearable. Mariah felt powerless as her reputation was slowly being destroyed by someone determined to remove her. Vanessa noticed Daniel's uncertainty and used it to push her agenda even further. She began whispering more concerns, always acting like she cared only about Liam's safety. She reminded Daniel of the missing jewelry, the supposed mistakes, and now the bruise. She made everything sound logical and unavoidable. Daniel felt overwhelmed and embarrassed, wondering if he had ignored problems for too long. He wanted to keep peace in the house and protect his son, but he did not realize that Vanessa was shaping every detail to make Mariah look guilty. Mariah, meanwhile, tried to keep working as usual, even though her hands shook whenever she prepared bottles or clothes. She feared that one more accusation would cost her the job she depended on. The trust she once had with Daniel seemed to be disappearing, replaced by suspicion she had never earned. Each day felt longer than the last, and she did not know how to defend herself. The situation reached a new level when Vanessa secretly contacted the police. She called them quietly, without telling Daniel beforehand, and reported another supposed theft. She claimed Mariah had taken something valuable and refused to return it. When officers arrived at the mansion, Daniel was caught completely off guard. Mariah stood in shock as the police asked her questions she never thought she would hear. Vanessa acted emotional, pretending to be shaken and hurt. Daniel tried to remain calm, but he felt humiliated that the situation had escalated so far. After checking the facts, the police found no evidence of theft. Nothing was missing, and nothing linked Mariah to any crime. They left without taking action. Vanessa acted relieved, but continued pretending she was just trying to protect the home. Daniel apologized for the trouble, but the damage was already done. Even though Mariah was not arrested or charged, the public embarrassment affected her deeply. She felt exposed and humiliated, knowing that neighbors, staff, and even strangers had seen officers come to question her. Her reputation, which she had built over 8 years of loyal work, suddenly felt fragile. She walked through the mansion feeling smaller, as if every person she passed was judging her. Daniel did not fire her, but he no longer treated her with the trust or warmth he once had. Vanessa continued smiling politely when others were around, but her eyes showed a quiet satisfaction. Mariah realized that Vanessa's goal was to remove her piece by piece, not through truth, but through pressure, lies, and manipulation. She tried to keep her focus on Liam, the one innocent soul in the middle of everything, but every day became harder. She felt trapped, unsupported, and unsure of what would happen next. Daniel was still unsure about everything that had been happening in the house. Even though Vanessa's accusations were constant, something inside him told him that the situation did not feel right. One afternoon, he had a private conversation with one of the oldest security guards, a man who had worked at the mansion long before Daniel became a father. The guard explained that in all the years he had watched Mariah work, she had never made serious mistakes and had always been careful with the baby. He added that many of the recent problems seemed unusual, almost as if they had happened on purpose. These words stayed in Daniel's mind and disturbed him more than he expected. He realized he needed to see the truth for himself without anyone knowing. After thinking about it for days, he decided to observe everything closely. He planned a full weekend where he would not appear as Daniel Walker, the billionaire, but as a simple worker on his own property. To make the plan work, Daniel prepared a disguise that made him look different from his usual self. He put on old boots, worn-out pants, thick gloves, and a hat that covered his hair. He spoke with the actual gardeners and arranged to blend in with them, pretending to be a new employee hired by Vanessa. The gardeners cooperated, keeping his presence quiet. With this disguise, Daniel could walk around the garden without being recognized. He moved slowly, observing the entrances, the windows, and the outdoor areas connected to the house. From the outside, he could see some of the interactions through the glass and hear occasional conversations. His heart beat fast every time he noticed Vanessa giving orders with a tone he had never heard before. Daniel realized that Vanessa acted much differently when she thought he was not around. She sounded impatient and controlling, as if she believed she truly owned everything in the mansion. Inside the house, Vanessa behaved with an air of superiority that Daniel had never witnessed so openly. She walked through the rooms giving instructions to the staff, barely hiding the arrogance in her voice. She acted as though every detail of the mansion belonged to her and that everyone should follow her commands without question. Mariah continued doing her work quietly, even though Vanessa constantly made comments and tried to limit her movements. Daniel watched from the window as Vanessa raised her voice at Mariah, but she switched to a sweet tone when other staff approached. This sudden change made Daniel uncomfortable. It reminded him of how she behaved in public, always pretending to be kind and supportive. He began to wonder how many moments like this he had missed before, moments where Vanessa showed her true personality when he was not present. The more he observed, the more uneasy he felt. At one point during the weekend, Daniel saw something that bothered him deeply. Vanessa told Mariah that she was not allowed to go near the pool area anymore. Her tone was strict and final, as though she had complete authority over the space. Mariah, confused but wanting to avoid conflict, quietly stepped back and focused on her remaining tasks. Daniel felt tension build inside him. He knew the pool area was one of the places where Liam often played safely under Mariah's care, and blocking her from this area seemed unnecessary and harsh. Vanessa claimed she was taking control for safety reasons, but her expression did not match her words. She seemed more interested in showing her power than protecting the baby. Daniel stayed hidden but paid close attention, realizing that Vanessa's behavior reflected an attitude he had not fully seen before. Vanessa continued acting like she was the only one who knew what was best for Liam. She took the baby in her arms and insisted that she would handle his care for the day. Daniel watched from afar as she repeated the same phrases over and over, saying she understood the baby better and that Mariah needed to stand back. Mariah obeyed quietly, trying to avoid any argument, but Daniel could see the discomfort on her face. Liam seemed uneasy as well, crying at moments when Vanessa held him awkwardly or moved too quickly. Instead of trying to soothe him gently, Vanessa sighed in frustration and gave him toys to distract him. Daniel felt a heavy pressure in his chest. He remembered how Mariah always handled Liam with patience and familiarity, and the contrast between the two women became clearer than ever as he observed them from his hidden position. Throughout the weekend, Daniel remained disguised, moving between the garden and the outer hallways where he could watch without being noticed. Each hour confirmed more of what the security guard had warned him about. Vanessa's arrogance, her comments, her tight control over the house, and her insistence on distancing Mariah from the baby all formed a pattern he could no longer ignore. He saw how Mariah continued working with honesty and calmness despite the constant mistreatment. By the end of the weekend, Daniel felt shaken. He realized he had trusted the wrong person and doubted someone who had been loyal for years. As he left his disguise behind, he understood that the next step would be difficult, but necessary. He needed to confront the truth he had witnessed with his own eyes. Vanessa felt even more free to act however she wanted, since she had not seen Daniel anywhere inside the mansion for hours. She assumed he was out handling work matters, so she no longer tried to hide her attitude. She told Mariah that she wanted to spend time with Liam near the pool, saying it in a tone that made it clear she expected no questions or objections. She then ordered Mariah to stay inside the house, arranging rooms and folding clothes. Mariah felt uncomfortable with the request because she knew the pool required extra caution, especially with a baby. Still, she obeyed, afraid of causing another conflict or being accused of not following orders. Vanessa walked toward the pool carrying Liam, smiling in a way that looked forced and exaggerated. She acted excited, as if she was preparing for a fun activity. Mariah watched from inside for a moment, and even though she could not hear everything, something about the situation made her chest tighten with concern. Once Vanessa reached the edge of the pool, she held Liam poorly, without the careful support that Mariah always offered. She began swinging him from side to side in a fast, careless manner. The movement made the baby uncomfortable, and he started whining almost immediately. Vanessa ignored the signs and kept smiling as if she was proud of what she was doing. At that moment, Daniel was hidden between the plants, still wearing his disguise and holding a gardening tool in his hands. From where he stood, he had a clear view of everything happening. His heart beat harder as he watched Vanessa's reckless behavior. He had planned only to observe the interactions in the house, but he never expected to witness something that could endanger his son. Every time Vanessa moved Liam too close to the water, Daniel tightened his grip on the tool, fighting the urge to reveal himself too soon. Vanessa then took the baby's colorful ball and gently tossed it into the pool. She acted as if it were part of a fun game. She looked at Liam with a smile that seemed almost playful, but her actions were irresponsible. The ball floated away, and Vanessa leaned forward, pretending to show him how it moved over the water. Liam did not find any amusement in the situation. He cried louder, frightened by the sudden movement, the splash, and the way Vanessa kept bringing him close to the edge. Instead of calming him down, Vanessa laughed lightly, as if the baby's fear meant nothing. Daniel felt the tension rising inside him as he continued watching silently. He could see clearly that Vanessa was not being careful and that she had no real concern for the baby's reactions. She treated the whole moment like a performance rather than a responsibility. As Vanessa continued, her movements became even more careless. She shifted Liam from one arm to the other without checking if he felt secure. His legs trembled slightly with fear, and his cries became louder. Daniel's eyes followed every detail, and the longer he observed, the more disturbed he felt. He now understood that Vanessa had never shown true patience with the baby. Everything she had displayed before had been an act for his benefit. Watching her now, he realized how dangerous her behavior could be. Still, he remained hidden, trying to see the full truth before intervening. His body stayed tense, prepared to step forward the second he believed Liam was at real risk. He was torn between staying to confirm what he already suspected and rushing to rescue his child from the unsafe situation unfolding before him. Inside the mansion, Mariah tried to focus on the tasks Vanessa had assigned, but her mind refused to stay calm. She folded clothes slowly, her hands trembling slightly with uneasiness. Something felt wrong. She kept glancing toward the window that faced the pool, hoping to catch a glimpse of what was happening outside. Each time she tried to push away her worries, they came back stronger. Mariah had taken care of Liam since he was born, and she knew the baby's temperament well. She sensed when he cried from hunger, sleepiness, or fear, and she felt a tension in her chest now, as if she could hear his discomfort even from far away. Her instincts told her that Vanessa was not handling things gently. The feeling of helplessness grew inside her, and she silently prayed that nothing bad would happen while she was forced to stay away. The atmosphere around the mansion felt heavier by the minute. Daniel kept watching, unable to step out of his hiding place without revealing his plan too early. Vanessa continued treating the situation like a game, unaware that she was being observed. Liam's cries intensified, echoing softly across the yard. Daniel felt each cry hit him like a warning. Mariah, inside the house, felt her worry grow. Even though she had no clear view of the moment, both of them, in different places, sensed the danger for different reasons. Vanessa, on the other hand, remained disconnected from the fear she was causing. She stayed focused on maintaining her confident, playful act, completely unaware that her behavior was being judged by the very person she tried hardest to deceive. Mariah finished her tasks earlier than expected and felt a strong need to check on Liam. She could not ignore the uneasy feeling she had been carrying since Vanessa ordered her to stay inside. Her instincts told her something might be wrong, and she decided she could not wait any longer. She walked quickly through the hallway and headed toward the backyard, hoping everything was fine. But the moment she stepped outside, her heart dropped. She saw Vanessa standing dangerously close to the edge of the pool while holding Liam in an unsafe position. Vanessa was laughing loudly, acting as if everything was harmless fun, while the baby cried in clear distress. Mariah felt panic hit her immediately. She rushed forward without thinking, shouting that Liam did not know how to swim and begging Vanessa to stop. Her voice cracked with fear as she tried to make Vanessa understand the risk, but Vanessa barely reacted. Instead of stopping, Vanessa turned to Mariah with irritation. She said the maid was being dramatic and overreacting. She dismissed Mariah's concerns with a cold expression, telling her to go back inside and continue working. Mariah shook her head, terrified by what she was seeing. She tried to approach again, but Vanessa raised her hand sharply, signaling that she wanted no interference. Liam's cries grew louder, echoing across the pool area. He was clearly terrified. his small hands grabbing onto Vanessa's clothes in desperation. Mariah's eyes filled with helplessness as she watched the scene unfold. She had never seen Vanessa handle the baby with such carelessness. Everything about the moment felt wrong, and she could not understand why Vanessa refused to take the situation seriously. She wanted to protect Liam, but Vanessa's anger and authority left her frozen in place. Hidden among the plants, Daniel, still in disguise, watched everything with painful clarity. He had a perfect view of Vanessa's posture, the unsafe position of Liam's body, and the panic in his son's eyes. He could also see Mariah's fear and desperation as she tried to intervene. Daniel felt his stomach twist as he realized how close Liam was to falling into the water. He had come there only to observe the truth, but what he saw was far worse than he expected. Vanessa's behavior was not a simple mistake or a misunderstanding. It was careless, reckless, and cruel. Daniel stayed still because he needed to see everything clearly, but every second felt harder to endure. His protective instincts grew stronger with each passing moment. He could no longer deny that Vanessa had been putting his son at risk. Vanessa continued laughing, ignoring the child's desperate cries. She shifted Liam suddenly and held him with one arm, leaving him unstable. His body leaned toward the pool, and his little legs kicked in fear. Instead of pulling him closer or trying to comfort him, Vanessa acted annoyed by his reaction. She called him fussy and said he needed to get used to things. Mariah gasped loudly, taking a step forward even though she had been told to stay back. Daniel could see how much this hurt her. She had taken care of Liam since he was born, and watching him in danger tore her apart. Daniel's hands tightened around the tool he was holding. His breathing grew deep and unsteady as he waited for the right moment to intervene. Every sign pointed to the truth he had been ignoring for too long. Vanessa should not be anywhere near Liam. Then came the moment that changed everything. Vanessa loosened one of her hands from Liam, letting him slip slightly toward the water. His upper body leaned forward, and for a terrifying second, it looked like he would fall straight into the pool. Vanessa acted as if it were part of a playful game, smiling wide as if she found the situation amusing. Mariah screamed, her voice full of panic, calling Vanessa's name in desperation. Liam's cry reached a painful pitch, the sound of pure fear. Daniel felt something inside him snap. He watched the entire scene with disbelief and anger. He could no longer pretend that Vanessa was simply inexperienced or misunderstood. This was deliberate recklessness, and it left no room for excuses. For Daniel, that exact moment became the final and undeniable proof he needed. Everything around him seemed to freeze as he absorbed what he had just witnessed. The baby's terror, Mariah's desperation, and Vanessa's coldness all collided in Daniel's mind. This was not the woman he believed he was going to marry. This was someone who had lied, manipulated, and put his son in danger. He knew now that every doubt he had ignored before was real. Vanessa's charm was only an act, and the truth had been revealed in the worst possible way. Watching Liam almost fall into the pool showed Daniel how close he had come to losing the most important person in his life. At that moment, the disguise no longer mattered. The calm investigation no longer mattered. What mattered was protecting his child and finally facing the reality he had avoided for too long. Daniel dropped the tools he was holding and sprinted toward the pool without hesitation. His only focus was reaching Liam before anything worse could happen. He grabbed the baby from Vanessa's arms carefully but urgently, holding him close and checking if he was hurt. Liam clung to him, still crying hard, his tears wetting Daniel's shoulder. Vanessa tried to laugh as if everything had been harmless fun. She said she was only playing and that Daniel was overreacting. Her voice had a forced lightness that did not match the fear on the baby's face. Daniel did not respond right away because he was trying to calm Liam, but his jaw was tight with anger. Mariah ran to them, breathing heavily, clearly shaken by what she had just witnessed. She looked at Daniel with desperation in her eyes, hoping he would finally understand the danger. Vanessa crossed her arms, annoyed, acting as if she were the victim of unnecessary drama. Mariah gathered her breath and quickly explained everything she had seen. She said Vanessa had been holding Liam in a dangerous way, ignoring his cries and refusing to listen when Mariah warned her. She reminded Daniel of all the past incidents too, how Vanessa had kept making risky decisions, how the baby had already gotten a bruise once, and how she had been banned from entering the pool area even when she was needed. Daniel listened silently, each word forming a clearer picture in his mind. He remembered the jewelry planted in Mariah's room, the fake theft accusations, the unnecessary police call, and the way Vanessa always blamed Mariah for every problem. Vanessa rolled her eyes and claimed Mariah was exaggerating, trying to make her look bad. She insisted she had done nothing wrong, but her voice trembled slightly. She could tell the situation was slipping out of her hands. Daniel suddenly felt everything connect all at once. Every suspicious moment, every strange incident, every tear Liam had shed in Vanessa's arms, it all formed a single truth he could no longer deny. Vanessa had been manipulating him for weeks. She had tried to remove Mariah, created lies, and put his son at risk more than once. When Vanessa noticed his expression change, she tried to regain control. This time, she turned the blame on him. She said he did not know how to raise his own child and claimed he was responsible for the chaos. She said Liam cried because Daniel spoiled him, and she insisted she knew better. Her words were sharp and desperate, but Daniel was no longer confused. He looked at her with clarity for the first time since the engagement began. He could see past every charm she had used to fool him. Daniel responded with a firm voice that left no room for argument. He told Vanessa the engagement was over. His tone was steady and controlled, but filled with finality. He said she needed to leave the house immediately and that he no longer wanted her near Liam or any part of their lives. Vanessa's mouth fell open in disbelief. She took a step forward as if trying to reach him, but Daniel moved back protectively with Liam in his arms. She tried to insist that he was being unfair, but her arguments had lost all power. The more she talked, the clearer her desperation became. Mariah stood still, holding back tears of relief and exhaustion. Vanessa's voice rose slightly, demanding that Daniel reconsider, but he stayed quiet and unmoving, refusing to be manipulated again. The decision was already made in his heart and mind. The loud voices and sudden tension drew the attention of other employees in the mansion. One by one, workers appeared around the pool area, watching the scene unfold. They saw Daniel holding Liam protectively, Mariah standing beside him, and Vanessa growing more unsteady as she realized she had been exposed. The workers exchanged glances, understanding without explanation that a truth had finally surfaced. Many of them had noticed strange behavior from Vanessa, but had been too afraid to speak. Now everything made sense. They stood in quiet shock as Daniel repeated his order for Vanessa to leave the property. No one stepped forward to defend her. No one believed her tears or excuses anymore. The atmosphere felt heavy, but also strangely clear, like a curtain had finally been lifted. Vanessa's expression shifted from shocked to defeated. She looked around and saw that no one supported her, no one doubted what they had witnessed, and no one believed her explanations. Her confident mask, the one she had used to deceive and control, was gone. She realized she had lost everything she had worked for, the engagement, the mansion, and the influence she believed she had over Daniel. With no more arguments left, Vanessa turned and walked toward the exit, her steps unsteady and angry. Daniel watched her go without a single word. Around him, the employees remained silent, respecting the moment. Liam rested against his chest, still shaken, but slowly calming down. Mariah stood nearby, finally feeling seen and believed. The truth had finally come out, and Vanessa's mask had fallen completely. Daniel gathered all the employees in the main hall of the mansion because he wanted everyone to hear the truth directly from him. The workers stood quietly, unsure of what he was about to say. Daniel took a deep breath and explained everything he had witnessed while he was disguised in the garden. He told them he had seen Vanessa treating Liam poorly, acting carelessly, and ignoring the baby's fear. He also mentioned the lies, the planted jewelry, the false accusations, and the constant manipulation. The employees listened with wide eyes, some shocked, and others relieved that he finally understood what had been happening. Daniel then turned to Mariah and apologized publicly for doubting her. He said he regretted every warning and every moment she had been treated unfairly. His voice was steady, and everyone could see he meant every word. Mariah felt her eyes fill with tears but stayed silent, absorbing the moment she had waited for. Daniel continued by announcing that all warnings and accusations recorded against Mariah were officially erased. He said the records did not reflect who she truly was, and that he had been wrong to trust Vanessa's words. To show his gratitude and respect, he increased Mariah's salary and reinstated her full responsibilities in caring for Liam. He said plainly that she had always been the most trustworthy and loyal person in the house. The employees nodded in agreement because many of them had seen her dedication over the years. Mariah stood with her hands pressed together, overwhelmed with emotion. She thanked Daniel quietly, but the relief in her face said more than words could. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe again. She felt seen and believed after weeks of fear and humiliation. Daniel promised her that things would never reach that point again. Later, Daniel arranged a meeting with Laura. He wanted her to hear the entire story, not through rumors or messages, but directly from him. When Laura arrived, she listened carefully as he explained everything: Vanessa's lies, her behavior with Liam, and the dangerous moment by the pool. Laura's expression showed both shock and gratitude. She was horrified that someone had endangered her child, but relieved that Mariah had been there to protect him. She thanked Mariah sincerely for putting Liam's safety first, even while being mistreated and accused unfairly. Mariah shook her head and said she had simply done what any responsible person would do, but Laura insisted that her strength and loyalty had been extraordinary. The three of them spent time discussing how to prevent anyone from harming Liam again. Daniel and Laura agreed that they needed to take legal steps to ensure their son's safety. Daniel's lawyers worked quickly to prepare documents that legally prevented Vanessa from approaching the family ever again. The restriction covered the mansion, the surrounding property, and all places where Liam visited regularly. Once the papers were ready, Daniel signed them immediately, determined to protect his son and the people who had always stood by him. When he told Mariah about the legal measure, she felt her knees weaken under the weight of relief. She had lived in constant fear that Vanessa might return with another accusation or attempt to ruin her life again. But now, knowing Vanessa was legally barred from coming near the family, she felt an enormous burden lifting from her shoulders. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe without worry. When Mariah went to her room afterward, she finally allowed herself to cry. They were tears of relief, not sadness. She had endured humiliation, fear, and confusion, but now everything was clear and settled. The lies had been exposed, the truth had been recognized, and her name had been cleared. She wiped her face with trembling hands and smiled softly. She felt stronger than before, knowing she had protected Liam even when her own situation was at risk. Her heart felt lighter, and she could return to her routine with peace. She no longer had to look over her shoulder or fear unexpected accusations. The mansion that once felt heavy with tension now felt safe again. Life in the mansion slowly returned to normal. The atmosphere became calmer, the workers performed their tasks without fear, and the halls felt lighter. Liam adjusted quickly, no longer forced into stressful situations. He smiled again, relaxed and comfortable in Mariah's arms. Daniel often saw them together and felt grateful for her presence in his son's life. Mariah resumed every part of her work with the same dedication she had always shown, but now without the shadow of doubt hanging over her. Daniel made sure she knew her value, and Laura expressed her gratitude each time they spoke. Peace settled over the house once again, and the family, although imperfect and divided, felt protected. In the center of it all, Mariah held Liam gently, knowing she had never abandoned him and never would. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.